Item number 1 is a discussion regarding the 2022 Pinal County primary, general election. And I just want to say kudos to the election team. The difference between this election and the previous one, light years. And it has to do with, the team running it. So congratulations. The only thing that I saw yesterday, the biggest complaints that I got yesterday, because I get to talk because it's me, was the aliens came and took all the power from Superior for about 2 hours yesterday. The whole town lost power. And they said, oh my gosh, it's a conspiracy. No, it's just aliens. It was okay. And it was fixed. And the other big one was that at one precinct they were giving out I voted 2020 stickers. Oh my gosh, it was a disaster. So, and I'm sure there were some other minor things. But anyway, Mr. Liu, I believe you've got the floor because Ms. Ross is busy doing her own thing.
Do we all get to talk?
Do you want to talk?
I want to say one thing.
Tell you what, everybody gets a chance to say something, then we'll let Mr. Liu talk.
Everybody was worried about the DOJ observers, and I tracked down the ones in my area. And so we observed the observers, and they did sit there and behave. They weren't interacting with voters. I was afraid there was going to be reverse intimidation, and they were going to be interviewing people, but they didn't. They sat there. They showed me their credentials, and one was from Arizona and one was flown in, and I don't know that they saw anything negative. I don't think we had hardly anything negative in our county, so I just want to let everybody know that I did track them down.
Good. Anybody else want to voice a concern or opinion, comment? Wow, you don't?
I guess you're inviting me to, so I'm going to go ahead and engage then. Yeah, I drove around as well, and it was overall the narrative was that everything's going really good, and so it was good to know. I didn't even know some of the issues that were in other counties until late last night, so it was good to not be the center of attention, bottom line, and to really have it pulled off like it was. And I appreciate the efforts of our staff and everything to really clean up some of the things that we had going on. I'm pretty confident that we have put back in the confidence of our voters here in Pinal County of some of the things that are going on. So, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Supervisor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just say that I did purposely wait till late in the day to go vote because I wanted to see if there was going to be a line and if there were any issues, and there wasn't. It went quite smooth. I want to do a little shout out to all the county employees that participated in the elections and process to help cover all these positions that we need during the process. I even farmed out my district administrator, Michael Cruz, because he has an IT background, so he was called into duty, and some of the most challenging things were, well, here's the on and off switch. Here we need to use an electrical cord to get this to work. So anyway, but outside of that, I think it went well. And again, like I said, I think Pinal County stepped up, and I think we've shown our citizenry in the state of Arizona that we can run an election without a whole lot of issues. So great job, everybody.
Supervisor Kavanaugh, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, too, went and visited polling places and found, like Mr. Miller, there was an issue with poll pads, connectivity, and plugging it in and so on. I think that was resolved. My heart stopped when they said people were being sent to the wrong polling places based on the website. And then I looked, and it wasn't our website. It was somebody else's website. But so we called those folks and said, hey, your addresses are wrong. And within 5 minutes, it was changed. Maybe it was underway before we even called. So it appears things came off without a hitch in our district.
Very good. Okay. Now, Mr. Liu, your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just echo and thank all of the county employees, all of the poll workers that came back and had sounds like a much better experience. And we'll continue to update our training and I think do it a little bit more periodically, even throughout the years, so that stuff can stay fresh. And, I really echo Supervisor Miller's comment about, is it on? Similar to your conference room with the Zoom video equipment. And, you could try something for 30 minutes, and then finally somebody says, well, is it on? Did somebody turn on? I think that did happen a couple of times. So the early ballots have been counted, as well as the vote in person ballots. But the early ballots, the counting of those were cut off on Friday. So the early ballots that were received on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and also yesterday, those are still to be verified and counted. There's about almost 26,000 of those that are out. And then we have 1,700 about provisionals. So that's what's left. They're going to be working, continuing to work through the week and probably also on Veterans Day, which, by the way, our Veterans Day ceremony is upstairs at 2 o'clock this afternoon. And then this afternoon will be the drawings for the hand count audit. And then staff will pull all of those and do the actual hand count audit tomorrow afternoon. That's most of it, and Mr. Volkmer is here too, and if there's any questions related, we're happy to try to answer or get the answers and get them back to you.
Mr. Volkmer, you have been called upon. Welcome back.
He's got a tan.
Yeah, look at that. Sunscreen's your friend,
Burn up here if I was being honest with everybody. Good morning, board. Ken Volkmer, Pinal County Attorney. Just want to provide some quick updates. I know there were some frustrations, and I know the board probably heard it from the candidates as well, why it was taking so long to update stuff. The thing that I'd just like to remind everybody is we had a 2-ballot election. So even though we processed 116,000 ballots, we really processed 230,000 ballots. The most ballots ever processed before was about 180,000 at the last presidential election. So what's happening is we're feeding them into this machine, and it's overwhelming and bogging down our machine. I know that the candidates were frustrated. They worked through the night. I know I had people that were there that left at 4 o'clock in the morning. So we had early boards people there. We had observers there. We had party representatives there. I left at 1:30, and it was still a full house. So people were really busting their hump to get stuff in, but they also wanted to make sure that they did everything right. They didn't cut any corners. I think it's important that this board and the public know that it was a complete team effort. It went incredibly well at the actual elections department. There was extreme frustration. I can tell you that the employees were as frustrated as a lot of the candidates wanting those results, but they continued to work through the night. The last update came in at like 7:30 something this morning to make sure that information was available for the start of the workday. So they literally worked through the morning hours to get that done. Just sort of kind of big picture, it looks like turnout's only going to be about 51%. So we had, Leo went through it, about 116,000 that we've counted thus far. We've got about 26,500, almost 27,000 to go. It's about 143 total thousand, and we're at about 282,000 registered voters. So it's only about a 51% turnout, but this is still a record high turnout for a non-presidential. And then remember, we did essentially double ballots because, my ballot was a full, and I think Supervisor Miller, you should have been in the same boat. It was a full front and back, 2 full pages. So the team did incredibly well. We were in contact with various party officials as well as counsel for some of the candidates. At this point, I'm very happy to report we have exactly 0 pending lawsuits regarding this election. Now, I'm knocking on wood because things can always change, but as of right now, we don't have anything filed, and we have not been put on notice that anything is anticipated. So that is really my update. I can answer any questions. I just wanted to make sure the board and also the public has this information because I think it's important that people appreciate, the Herculean task that our elections department really took on last night.
Any questions or comments from the board? Supervisor Kavanaugh.
Mr. Volkmer, concerning the hand count, we voted it down last week. We're informed that even supporting it, we could get charged with a misdemeanor. But is there any more information as far as being able to expand the hand count to validate the machine for 2 years from now?
So Cochise County expanded it, but they did 100% hand count. Remember, it went back and forth. There was litigation. They actually had a different judge from Pima County come in and hear it, so there was no, accusation of favoritism. That judge issued about a 10-page decision saying you could not do more than the 1% of the early ballots. You could not do a 100% hand count. Essentially, the advice that we provided was very similar to the advice that was argued, or the position argued by the Cochise County attorney. That court agreed with the county in that case. There is at least rumblings that it's going to be appealed. I don't know that it has been appealed. The Court of Appeals would hear it on an expedited basis, I believe. They could go straight to the Supreme Court, but I think they would go to Division II Court of Appeals. I think that would have to happen probably today, though.
My question wasn't about 100% hand count. It was just increasing it from 2 to maybe 4 precincts, so it would be a statistically valid measure of the machine. So you haven't covered that yet.
I don't believe that the court specifically ruled on that because Cochise changed it. So we don't have an official court ruling. The preliminary opinion from the Secretary of State's office is that small increase to 4%, for example, would be legally permissible. It had been expanded to 5% in a different jurisdiction at a different time, so that potentially could be available. The court has not ruled on that, and I don't believe that's been litigated anywhere at this point.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Volkmer. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Liu. I guess we'll move on to item 2, discussion, approval, disapproval of revisions to the Pinal County Policy 4.28, compensation plan maintenance, to update comparators and compensation strategies. And Ms. Shepard, good morning to you.
Good morning, Chairman McClure, members of the board, Mary Ellen Shepard, Deputy County Manager. At a recent national conference, a session was held entitled Attracting and Retaining Talent in the New World of Work. The message for public sector employers was not a good one. What they communicated based upon the Bureau of Labor Statistics was that private sector employment has now reached its pre-pandemic peak. However, public sector employment is still in a huge deficit. This comes as no surprise to any of our elected officials or our department directors who have been challenged with filling vacancies in today's world of work. Our own data shows that while we have increased 100 employees since fiscal year 19, we also still have about 140 vacancies. What this is saying is we are not keeping up with the need to fill our vacancies. We're not keeping up with the need for talent to meet our current demands and to meet our current business needs. I so appreciated hearing the feedback about elections because we all heard firsthand how critical county employees are to providing necessary services. And candidly, we're struggling with providing employees for just that purpose. We recognize the way we do business, therefore, needs to change. And that's why we're coming before you today. Although we need enhancements on many fronts and have continued to work on many fronts to address our talent, one of the areas we recognize we need to change is this policy, our compensation plan maintenance. We're seeking your approval to change, and I'm going to focus on the primary changes in the policy. The first of which is to tie the process to the budget development process. The way the current policy reads, it speaks about evaluating 25% of the positions every year. Rather than approach it based upon a percentage, we want to tie it to our budget process. And so elected officials, department directors have an opportunity as they go through that process to make their business case for both positions, but how those positions should be valued in terms of compensation. So it's tied together, and then it's all tied to how well we are achieving the outcomes and in alignment with our strategic plan. This policy also, the changes focus on eliminating the one-size approach to determining our comparators. Rather than look at it across the board as though all of our classifications and positions are the same, which they are not, we want to look at who our comparator agencies are, and those are what determine our market grades based upon what's actually happening in the market and the challenges faced based upon the classifications. For example, a professional level position where we're in competition with Maricopa County or Pima County specifically is different, and we experience our recruitment and retention differently than other positions that we don't have the university as feeders for. Also, we want to eliminate the one-size approach to how the market data is applied. Historically, here in Pinal County, we've done a match the market. And what that means is the average wage in our comparators is what has determined the grade for our positions. We need to be more aggressive in filling in some of our professional positions. And so we actually may need to lead the market, pay more than what our competitors are paying in order to get the talent we need. And when I say we need, these are areas that you all as a board have identified as critical. I'll use, for example, and I know the director is here with us, community development. If we can't compete for planners in order to fill those positions, that's a detriment to our ability to achieve our goals. We may need to actually lead the market to hire the talent that has those specific skill sets. And then candidly, in other areas, based upon our total compensation package, and I know this is important to you, that we may be able to match or even lag the market because the total package is more attractive. So rather than a one-size-fits-all, it's an approach that's based upon the needs, based upon the data, and monitored so that, in fact, works to meet the needs. And then finally, the policy also speaks to some agility and flexibility in how we use the grades. So there may be a case where instead of the minimum of the grade that's established in our compensation plan, we may need to be more aggressive and hire someone above the minimum. The beauty of that approach is it allows the flexibility. If our market changes, then we can go back to using the minimum of the grade. But if the market remains competitive, we work within that pay grade. The alternative and the approach that's been taken historically is to change the grade. That inflates that minimum that with a volatile market may not be in the best interest of the county. So let me wrap this up by saying we need greater flexibility. We're in a very challenging time, and this policy is designed to apply that flexibility. Again, I repeat this because it's important based upon the data and the evidence of success in recruiting and retaining our workforce. With that, may I ask if there are any questions?
Questions or comments from the board? Supervisor Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're doing double duty right now, county manager and HR director. Is that right?
Chairman McClure, Supervisor Kavanaugh, yes, I am.
And was that position open for HR director for a while and advertised, and was it not filled because of this very problem?
Chairman McClure, members of the board, Supervisor Kavanaugh, that's a true statement. The position has been open for, oh my gosh, approximately a year. And our ability to hire a candidate with the skill set that we felt was needed to move the county forward, we weren't comfortable in doing so, so that's a part of the issue. Yes, sir.
And I see that under C, where we discuss compensation assigned to a group of similar jobs, midpoint, comparator agencies, and I think in the second paragraph we talk about competitive in the market. We're talking the market, the business market, as well as the government employment market. Is that right?
Chairman McClure, Supervisor Kavanaugh, that is an excellent question. The comparators in the market that we use are public sector comparators. We are not currently reaching out to private sector comparators in terms of establishing the grades. We are looking to that data to help inform our decision, but private sector is not incorporated in the ranges that we ultimately apply.
But if we're competing against the private sector and we have 140 open positions, wouldn't it be wise to look at the private sector as well?
Chairman McClure, Supervisor Kavanaugh, absolutely. It is, how do I best answer this? We look to what the private sector is paying to help inform the decision, but we are not incorporating that data in setting our ranges. In large part, it's a consistency issue, how to do it in a consistent way, and it's a capacity issue. The existing resources to do compensation studies, currently we have 1 employee. So by looking at the public sector, we're able to consistently apply the data. So we're able to say same approach and explain the process and analysis. And then we look at, well, how does this compare to the private sector? And that's where this new policy allows us the flexibility of making adjustments in the established ranges. Hopefully I'm responsive to your question, because you're spot on in saying we can't operate in a vacuum. We're in competition with the private sector. It's just a matter of how we use that data. We use the data to inform our decision, but not to set our pay grades.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if we'd want them, but Facebook's laying off 11,000.
Cool, we can have a better Facebook page, huh? That'd be great. James, you hearing that? I know you're. I think part of your procedure, though, that's very good is that, you're looking at private sector, but also when we're talking to employees is to show the entire package. I think we've had conversations about that, what we offer compared to the private sector, whether it's retirement, whether it's this. And I know people look at the paycheck going home, but if you can promote that long range look at but we offer this, and here's really what you're getting out of it. I think we've done that in the past.
Chairman McClure, yes, there has been the request and to make sure our employees understand their total compensation, which includes benefits and other offerings that we give here in Pinal County.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Supervisor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mary Ellen. All of this stuff we've hashed over. I've seen this pendulum swing back and forth many a time. So, and trying to hit it is hard because it's constantly moving. And one observation, and I'll just put this out there because it came up in a discussion yesterday that I had. We might move these wages up, but we've never brought any wages down on any positions. So, and it takes a while for some of that to correct. And that's just part of the game. But the idea that we might move higher up on the range or higher up in a step for somebody with some experience, I don't think is a bad idea. If that's the person we need and they kind of fill the bill for what we need. And I think the benefit to that, or our protection there, is they have 6 months to figure out. We get 6 months to figure out if they know what they're doing, and we have to be very. They have to deliver, and I mean, I just think that that's the most important part about some of this stuff. That I know in the private sector, you would see a reaction a lot quicker if that wasn't the case. And sometimes I think we lag. There's no question here, I guess, Mary Ellen, but what I'm saying is I like the approach, I like the idea, and I think we should go down this path at this point in time. But those are some of the things that I have observed over the years. So just wanted to point them out.
Chairman McClure, if I may respond to Supervisor Miller's comments. Your points are well taken, and hopefully I've characterized this policy change accurately in that it is a part of a comprehensive look at our workforce to include, as we look to the competitor agencies, as we're looking to lead the market strategy, there has been multiple discussions with Leo and the executive team about this also means setting the bar higher, ensuring that our qualifications and standards are also competitive, holding all of us accountable to achieving the expectations. It's not just compensation for the sake of bringing someone in. It has to be a part of an overall package of doing the job needed to serve our community.
Yeah. Can I make one more comment? And I'm going to kind of go backwards here, but to the point that we look at the data from the private sector, but we don't use them as comparators. Kind of always thought we might be a good idea too, but I'm going to use an example to help understand why we might not use private. If we were looking at a civil engineer from the private sector and a civil engineer that would come to the public sector, the private souvenir would be drawing plans, doing calculations, producing a product that's going to go to a customer and ultimately be built. Our side of that will be an engineer that will review the work when it comes in and looks at it. They don't have to, it's not a production kind of thing. So those are some of the nuances that are just a little bit different, why we might not use private comparators. But again, it's something to monitor.
And Chairman McClure, Supervisor Miller, thank you for adding that. I don't feel that I did a great job in responding to this public-private sector. Bottom line, this is very complex. Each position, the needs, the market, the competition, the way wages go up and down, it's a complex system. And what we're trying to do today is add some agility so we can move with the market, collect the data, and make better decisions. But I would be misrepresenting our staff and our abilities to stay on top of this if I spoke to and say, yes, we can get private sector data, we can stay current, we can do the analysis. We're trying to set a framework that we can apply in a consistent way and stay on top of movement and not lock us into changes as the market changes, which it does.
I appreciate that.
Very good. Any other questions or comments from Ms. Shepard?
Mr. Chairman, I have one.
Well, Supervisor Kavanaugh.
Thank you. And even you mentioned the position that evaluates salaries. We have one person. How many should we have?
Well, candidly, we have a compensation manager position that we have been unable to fill. We also have a analyst position that has just been temporarily reassigned. So we currently have 3 positions dedicated to this work. But HR is in the same boat as other county departments, unable to hire to fill critical positions.
But these same positions, we establish salaries based on comparators of other counties.
Chairman McClure, Supervisor Kavanaugh, yes, based upon the historical strategy, which is the 6th largest counties and then the 6th largest cities in incorporated areas, and match the market. With this policy, if you approve it today, we will revisit the critical positions. We will apply a more competitive position. We will look to Maricopa County, which is our primary competitor, and they use the cities in establishing their pay grades, and ideally will be in a better position to recruit for what we need to shore up some of these critical areas.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other comments? Okay, one more comment.
So, Mr. Chairman, on this issue, I'm going to recuse myself. I have a conflict.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Kavanaugh, just for the record, would you also provide something in writing to the clerk's office so that she can have that as to what that conflict is, because we need to include that with the minutes.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so no other questions, comments? May I ask for motion, please? Or I will ask for motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the item number 2 as presented.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes 4-1 with one recusal.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Shepard. Item 3, presentation of the Red Rock Small Area Transportation Study. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I am Tara Harmon. I'm a Senior Transportation Planner with the Public Works Department, and I'm here this morning with Brian Snyder and Kevin Kugler from Michael Baker International to present to you a project briefing on the Red Rock Small Area Transportation Study. This study is funded as part of the 2023 Transportation Improvement and Maintenance Program that you all approved this past June. And it has been commissioned to assess and create a plan to ensure the current and proposed transportation systems are aligned with the existing needs and anticipated growth and development within and surrounding the Red Rock area. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin and Brian for the presentation.
All right. Thank you. And welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Supervisor Goodman, good to see you again. Kevin Kugler, I'm a principal with Michael Baker, and hopefully that name does sound familiar to you, because we have been collaborating with your fine staff on various different community and transportation planning projects over the course of the last few years. So, and as Tara said, this project's no different. It was an exciting endeavor to collaborate with your talented staff, particularly Dedrick and Tara, on this particular project and looking at the Red Rock area and its future transportation needs. And I'm pleased to report to you, Brian's going to give you all the details, but we had a really solid group of a partnership of stakeholders at the table, including Silver Bell, the airport, some of the large property owners in the area. So this plan is really bolstered by some solid input from some key stakeholders, and then we had a good turnout at a couple, particularly the last one, public outreach meetings. So your talented staff did a great job of getting the word out and making sure that we were able to get the input from the stakeholders and the public that really helped bolster and make this plan a resounding success. So I just wanted to thank you again for the opportunity to continue our collaboration with your staff, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Brian to give you the details. Thank you.
Thank you.
See if I can figure out the IT here. Okay. So this, as Kevin and Tara said, this study's been going on for roughly about 12 months. So we're going to cover just part of the study in a fairly short fashion. And I've got the agenda on the slide before you. We're briefly just going to cover the study objectives and process, as well as the characteristics of the study area, and then go into some of those key objectives in a little bit more detail, which include the secondary access roadway analysis and results, as well as our findings and analysis on the proposed roadway network and functional classification network, the on and off street bike and pedestrian facilities that have been proposed, as well as the I-10 Red Rock traffic interchange modernization, and then we'll wrap up with just what are our next steps with the study process. So this is the study area that we looked at. It's roughly 38 square miles in size. It's located just south of Piacho State Peak, with the north boundary following the Park Link roadway alignment, and then navigates just south of Piacho Peak, with the west boundary on the Rice Road alignment, the southern boundary on the Pinal County, Pima County boundary, and the east boundary following the CIP alignment there until it connects with Park Link Drive. As the study started, there was approximately 3,600 residents in about 1,200 homes within the study area, all concentrated mostly within the Red Rock Master Plan community itself. The process, as I said, is taking about 12 months, and we broke it down into 4 key steps here. We started out with project initiation, which kind of created our project work plan. We identified what data we needed to execute the project, and then we held a project work group and a kickoff meeting with the various stakeholders within the study area that Kevin mentioned. And then we followed into the Working Paper 1 and Working Paper 2, which had different objectives. Working Paper 1 was really just to kind of review and assess the characteristics of the area to help identify deficiencies and help inform the recommendations that we needed for the study area. And that's really what Working Paper 2 included, is what are our recommendations and how are we going to improve the transportation network within this community. And the core objectives of the study, as I mentioned, were to identify potential secondary access roadway options within the study area, assess the multimodal network, which is your bike lanes and off-street facilities, to help improve the livability of the study area, and then inventory and assess the Red Rock I-10 traffic interchange to improve the flow and access and connectivity of the interchange and its connection with the community and study area. So the first of those objectives is our secondary access roadway analysis and alternatives. So we had 5 options that we reached at, and through our initial analysis in Working Paper 1, we determined, based on an origin and destination analysis, that the primary areas that we needed to provide a secondary access roadway option was, generally speaking, between the Red Rock community and Pinal Air Park Road there to the south. So we looked at various different planning efforts that had already taken place, as well as our origin and destination analysis and some of our other analyses and findings to reach these 5 different options. You have option A, which is in purple on the west side of the study area, which is approximately 7.4 miles long and connects a regionally significant route that's been identified in previous planning efforts on that Baumgartner alignment, south to just south of Pinal Air Park Road. And then option B is 5.1 miles long, which follows the experimentational roadway alignment and then follows the U of A Agricultural Research Center to then connect with Pinal Air Park Road at the Trico roadway alignment. And option C is 5.2 miles long, and this one kind of takes the form of a traditional frontage road just on the west side of I-10. Currently, there's only one frontage road on I-10 in this area, which is Camino Adelante on the west side. So that one would fall within ADOT right-of-way. Option D is 4.1 miles long, and that one is outside of ADOT right-of-way, but does have a similar shape of or form of a frontage road of the interstate. But this one would connect to the Aguirre Lane extension. For you those are familiar, there's ongoing construction in the Red Rock community, and they're extending that Aguirre Lane. So that option D and E actually continue off of that Aguirre extension to ultimately connect to Pinal Air Park Road. The main difference between option D and E is that option D connects at Pinal Air Park Road closer to the interchange, whereas option E connects at the Trico roadway alignment, just better increasing the regional connectivity and alignment with that Trico Road, which goes south into Pima County and into the town of Marana. So after identifying the alignments and the potential options, we looked at a series of evaluation criteria to measure the performance to ultimately reach a preferred alternative. So we had 7 evaluation criteria and a scoring system that we developed to help us inform, well, which is the best option and which one would meet the needs for the community itself. And those are the evaluation criteria before you. We looked at what is the construction cost and what would it cost to build these roadways? What are the right-of-way impacts? How much land needs to be acquired to build these roadways? And we also looked, those are quantitative metrics. We also use some qualitative metrics where what are the physical and natural impacts to the surrounding areas around each one of these alignments? How does it bolster the access and connectivity within the Red Rock community? And how does it integrate into the current land use as well as the future land use plan? And then we also use some other quantitative metrics such as what is the ultimate travel time to navigate these corridors? And then ultimately we had to feel how is this well received from the public and stakeholders in the area? So we obviously vetted the community and stakeholders to see what they would support. So this table before you summarizes those results in kind of an infographic format. We use a scoring system 1 through 5, with 1 showing no positive impactor value, with 5 having a significant positive impactor value based on whether it was a quantitative or a qualitative analysis. But the end result here is that option D overwhelmingly is the highest scoring at 33 points out of a total of 35, followed by option E. And you can see there that the public and stakeholder outreach or support that we vetted is fairly in line with our quantitative and qualitative analysis. So that's always important to see, and what we kind of call a sniff test is that our analysis and findings are in line with what the stakeholders and public view as the best option. So based on our findings in this analysis, we've moved forward with option D as a preferred alternative for a secondary access road. The second objective of the study was to look at the current transportation system and the projected growth in the area and to ensure that a sound plan is in place to make sure that the transportation network can support future growth. So the way to do that is look where additional capacity is needed and additional roadways are needed for anticipated growth. So before going into it, the current roadway network is on this map before you, and just a little graph there to show you that roads really serve 2 functions, and that's movement and access. And the FHWA classifies, and same with Pinal County, roads on a hierarchy called functional classification, with the highest being the interstate, which has the least amount of access but the highest amount of movement, and on the converse side, a local road, which is typically where we all live off of, have the highest level of access but the smallest amount of movement. And that's how we classify our roads and categorize them. So as part of this effort, we looked at where new roadways would need for anticipated growth, as well as what functional classification they would have to be. So based on our findings, and we looked at the future land use plan, which isn't tied to a specific planning horizon year, it's just upon build out. We looked at the origin and destinations where there's concentration of expected development to reach this proposed roadway network. And with that, you have a total of 106 miles of new and improved roadways within the network, concentrated obviously in the northwest area as well as near Pinal Air Park. And we looked at a variety of previous planning efforts as well as our own findings within this Red Rock Small Area Transportation Study to come up with these roadway alignments. And it's comprised of arterial roadways, which is roughly 12 miles, a minor arterial, which is 45 miles roughly, major collectors, which is roughly 10 miles, and then minor collectors, which is 19. And we weren't, as part of the study, weren't looking at local roadways, but we did take into consideration the future roadways, local roadways in Red Rock, and you can see that in the upper right-hand corner in the Red Rock inset there. Those are all local roadways anticipated with the ongoing construction. So with that, you also see on this map the I-11 preferred alternative. We took that into consideration with our roadway network as well. And when we went to the public here recently, we surveyed the Red Rock residents, and we got an overwhelming amount of support through that survey where 80% of the respondents supported these recommendations. So on top of the roadway network, we wanted to look at the multimodal network where there's sidewalks, bike lanes, and off-street facilities such as trail and paths. So currently, this map just shows you what's there today. Given the rural nature of the community, there's not much there today, especially outside of the Red Rock Master Plan community, where you do have various networks of sidewalks, bike lanes, as well as off-street trails that connect pocket parks. And then on the inset regional map there, you do see a couple adopted county trails. That was part of the Pinal County Open Space and Trails Master Plan, and that follows the CAP Canal and then obviously the Santa Cruz River Basin there. So we just took all this information as well as the proposed roadway network information to come up with a proposed on and off street bike and pedestrian facilities. So this map shows you where there would be facilities with sidewalks, where there would be facilities with sidewalks and a bike lane, which are typically your arterials and your collectors, and then where there's the off-street infrastructure, which include multi-use paths or trails or unpaved multi-use paths. And on the map, you'll see that there's a large concentration of sidewalks and bike lanes within the Red Rock community itself, but then also within those proposed roadway networks that I previously described with our proposed roadway network. And the ultimate goal here is, or the ultimate result is additional 212 miles of sidewalks, 182 miles of bike lanes, 8 miles of paved paths, and 19 miles of unpaved paths, in which we fostered a lot of off-street connections based on that origin and destination analysis I mentioned earlier. And when we went back to the public to garner their support, and through that survey, we found 83% of the residents, which I forgot to mention, we had 38 people respond to that survey, supported these recommendations. So the final key objective of the study was to look at the I-10 and Red Rock traffic interchange. As I'm sure you guys are all aware and have gotten off at this on and off I-10 at this location, it's an unoptimal design. It's got a compact design interchange, and then as well as you get to the off street on Sasco Road, it's got ungeometric design, and we found through our analysis that many of these design standards don't meet ADOT requirements. So as we were going through that, we're tasked with coming up with a modernization approach here. And what we found actually through our stakeholder involvement, unbeknownst to ourselves, when we kicked off this study, is that ADOT and Sunbelt Holdings were actually in the process of a kind of a phased approach here, and I got to pull up my notes for this one, but we found that they are actually already kicking off an effort for a traffic interchange redesign, and this is a joint project between Sunbelt Holdings and ADOT and FHWA in a partnering agreement, and it's a phased approach, and so you see these little dots on the map there, 1 through 8, and there's an interim or a near-term improvement, and then there's a long-term improvement. Starting with the number 1 is part of the initial phase. That current intersection at Sasco Road and Aguirre Lane, it's that awkward curve, and it's missing multiple legs of the intersection. That north leg where that number 1 is would just be a 2-lane extension to connect to the existing TI, and where you see those number 2, they would actually address that awkward curve of the current TI on and off ramp on the west side, and then number 2 is that would be the new alignment for the on and off ramp on the west side of I-10, and then there's a long-term plan in place where they would actually take the Sasco Road alignment and bring it into a new bridge over I-10 that would go over, and this would be a 5-lane facility, and actually the bridge would the design would maintain the existing bridge, and this new bridge would not only go over I-10, but it would actually proceed over the railroad line there and provide access to the east side of I-10, which the only way to get to the east side of I-10 is all the way down in Marana to the south, which is approximately 12 miles south, and then at Parklink Drive alignment. So that's one of the main reasons why there's a lack of east-west connectivity, which is really why this study was also birthed in the first place. So just we're at the end here, and that's why we're giving you this project briefing. We went through our project initiation, working paper 1 and working paper 2, and we're at our point where we're going to develop the draft final report, which is just stitching the two working papers together, also finishing our public and stakeholder outreach results into a draft final report in which we'll submit that to the county for staff review, as well as meet with our project work group one last time and get any final feedback. And then we wrap up with the final report, which we're trending to finish before the end of the calendar year. So at this point, I'll open it up for questions and comments you guys have.
Any questions or comments from the board? I just have to say it's great that you're doing that area. That's my area, and that's greatly needed.
Oh, that's great to hear, Chairman.
Supervisor Miller.
Can you find us any money so we can do the work after you get it?
That part. Oh, come on.
So that's a great point. Yes, we will provide a funding opportunities as part of our approach. There are currently no funding available for any of these recommendations, but we do have planning level cost estimates for all of it. So with the combination of the funding options and opportunities for the county that we outlined in the plan, as well as the cost estimates that we developed, it's at least a first step towards implementing these recommendations.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the board? I guess that's good. You did a great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Appreciate all your work.
Thank you, Board.
With that, we are adjourned.
That's where that